I categorize the regression questions into types. And that's just to make it a little bit easier to identify which one are we working with. But really, in the textbook, they would all be like scrambled up. And down the road, you're gonna have to be okay with that. So keep your finger on 53, but on 49, when we started regressions with word problems yesterday, I called this type 0. So this is like the original, like the OG of regressions, right? So they give you all the points. You just have to type them in, perform the regression, you go to town, right? But types 1, 2, and 3, you ready for this? It's Friday, it's gonna be more work, which is what you love, right? 1, 2, and 3 require you to come up with your own points. The problem is gonna give you enough information to do that, but that's on you to come up with the points there. So we need to come up with at least 3 points. So on 53, let's focus in on type 1 today. Type 1 profit/revenue types of questions. Okay, so types 1 to 3 require you to create a table, and you need to produce at least 3 points so that you're able to come up with a regression. So the keywords would be profit, revenue, items sold, tickets sold. You're selling stuff and you're making a profit out of it. So that's kind of like this camp that you're in. Most of the time, I will give you a table to get started because I kind of want that information somewhere visible, okay? But usually, I will not give the entries necessarily. So in general, I say the cost or the price per item goes first. Okay, cost, that would be like your first column. Then it's the number of items. That could vary. It could be bushels of that a farmer sells. It could be tickets sold. It could be canoe rentals. It could be various. So that's like how many did you sell? Okay, and then of course the profit that we're making is cost or price per item times the number of items. So this one kind of follows these 2 columns here, okay? So one thing that you need to remember is that this one is always L2, okay? So always L2, so that's not debatable, okay? We put that into our L2, which is basically our Y variable, okay? Whether you put this into L1 or this into L1, that is going to be dependent on the question, okay? So enter either cost or items into L1, profit into L2, so that would be your second step, right? Note that what goes into, I'm going to use a different color for this one. What goes into L1 depends on the wording of the question. If it says, come up with an equation relating the cost and the profit, what would you do then? If it says cost, then what goes into L1? Hint, hint, cost goes into L1. And profit, as always, goes into L2, right? So remember, this column, whatever numbers you have in there is going to go into L2, but in this case, cost goes into L1. If the question asks, come up with an equation relating items and profit, then the items will go into L1 and the profit goes into L2. So you just have to read carefully and go with it, okay? Perform the regression using quadratic regression. Make sure that the resulting equation does not have a 0. That is a telltale sign that you made a mistake. If you do your regression and A is 0, it's a linear, it's not going to be good enough, okay? So you got to watch out. Since L1 and L2 are used, turn on plot 1. I don't think I need to remind you of that, but I guess it doesn't hurt. And then we use zoom 9, that is like zoom stat, to see the points. Adjust the window until you see the entire parabola in quadrant 1. So in this one out of all is very important for you to adjust the window. Okay? put some arrows down to this statement. Okay, so in general, I'll let X min be -5 or 10 or something like that, and Y min, I'm going to change that to -5 or something that is negative. Those two I'm going to change for sure to make sure I see the whole parabola. You'll see what I'm talking about in a bit. So this is basically the steps required to do this regression. So generally, you'll have two scenarios. Both of these scenarios, profit will be along the y-axis. Okay, that's in dollars. So that is not going to change. Profit is going to go up the y-axis. That's your L2 entries. What is going to change is, I will call this one here, this will relate the cost and profit. This second graph here will relate the items sold and the profit. So this is a little bit, I'm kind of not making an accurate representation because the curves will look a little different. One will look steeper, one will look flatter. Okay, so they're not going to look the same when you come up with those equations. But what is true that for both of these, if you find the vertex, in this case, you're figuring out the cost, like how much should you charge to get the maximum profit. Because remember, Y is, right, you're trying to figure out what's the maximum amount that I can make here as a company. It's found there. Okay? Whereas in this scenario, you're figuring out how many items do you need to sell in order to maximize the profit. Don't worry, you're going to do one or the other. I'm just letting you know, right, that's what you're dealing with here. I'm going to use a red pen for this, but in this case, what goes along the x-axis? Cost, right? In this case, you have the cost per item you're selling along the x-axis. In the second scenario, what goes on the x-axis? The items sold. But in both cases, the maximum profit that you will determine is going to be the same. Like if you make $1 million, if you figure out the equation that relates cost and profit, you're going to figure out, oh, you make $1 million, you need to sell each iPod or AirPods for this much, right, to make $1 million. Okay, so and this other scenario is going to be like, well, you need to sell 20,000 AirPods to make that $1 million that you're after. Okay, so that's something to remember. And one last point before we do our first example. You ready for this? So there's this one sweet spot where if you cost it out or price it out, you will maximize your profit. But then there's the other scenarios. You can reduce the price and you will be making less, right? Let's say you'll be making 800,000 here. But look at this. There's the point right across from it over here on this other side. What does this mean? Like both of these scenarios make you a profit of 800,000. But why is it different? What's different here in terms of the cost? Here you charge less to make 800,000. On this side you charge more, you still make 800,000. And why is that? Well, this is when you charge less, you sell more items. You make 800,000, right? On the flip side, here you charge more. You're going to sell fewer items, but you still make 800,000. So as a company, you need to decide, what do I want, right? Do I want to charge more because I want to produce something higher quality? I'm okay with selling less. Or do I just want to sell a lot and charge, like go as cheap as I possibly can and sell more of it, right? That's where you see that on Amazon, right? There's like the brand name and then there's the knockoff or Temu or whatever. So a lot of the companies that do it for cheap, they know they're going to sell more. Probably going to have more issues, right? But that's not part of this class. Then you got to go business or something like that. Talk about that a bit more. Okay. Let's do our first example here. So this is important here. A movie theater. These were the good old days, okay? So this ages me quite a bit. $1.80 per ticket. What movie theater did you go to, Mr. Dixon? Someone's basement. Okay, $1.80. You're charging $1.80 per ticket to go to the theater there, and we're selling approximately 400 tickets per day at this price. Okay. The theater manager observed that for every 10-cent increase, right? For every 10-cent increase, there are 40 fewer tickets sold. That is the key right there. This is your starting point. That is basically they're giving you a point almost, right? Just prop it open a bit. Okay, so what are the three things that we need in general? We'll go cost per ticket. I generally start with it, but you don't have to. This will be the number of tickets. And this will be my profit. Okay? And the profit is found by going cost times the number of tickets. That's how you find it. So what's my starting point? $1.80. $1.80 per ticket sells 400 tickets. Okay, let's just do this part for now. We'll do this at the very end. So what are we told? When this changes, when this goes up by 10 cents, right? That means that you're going to be selling tickets for $1.90, right? You're increasing it by 10 cents. What happens to the number of tickets? Negative 40, yeah. 40 fewer tickets are sold. So you have to read carefully. So we're going to sell 360 tickets at a 10-cent increase. You need to do this one more time, okay? Because guess what? This first row is going to give us point number 1. Second row is going to give us point number 2. And then the third row is the third point. We need 3 points for a quadratic regression to work. So what are we at if you add another 10 cents? You get to $2 per ticket. Guess what? Since you raised it 10 cents, you're going to lose another 40 tickets. So you're at 320 here. And now we figure out our profit for each one of them. So I'm going to show you something cool here before we get started. I'll leave this blank for a bit. But what does it ask us here? Determine the equation relating the ticket price and the profit. So ticket price goes into L1 and the profit goes into L2. So which of these 3 columns am I going to put the L1 under? I'm going to put it right under the ticket price here, L1. And always, the last one here goes into L2. So let's go ahead and do that. You know what? I won't show you the trick yet because I don't want you to make that mistake. So we're just going to go 180 times 400 and write it down. Okay? We're going to go 180 times 400 and write down that that's 720. Then we're going to go 190 times 360. That's 684. Then it's $2 times 320, that's 640, right? So these are the values, right? These are the values that we're going to be entering into L2. So it's basically just read, set it up, and come up with these values that you can enter into L2. So let's go ahead and do this. So we got to go stat. You're still copying, right? Slow down. Stat, edit. Go to the top, always clear. So you hit clear and then enter to clear whatever's in the column. And we're going to go 180, 1.8, 1.9, 2. For L2, we're going to go over here, 720, 684, 640. Perfect. What's our next step? Y equals, right? Clear any equations that you have in there. Turn on plot 1. Then hit graph. And it's still not there. Am I missing something? Zoom, stat, yeah. I did that on purpose. So there we go. What does that look like a quadratic to you right now? It kind of looks like a straight line, right? Because we're so zoomed into these 3 points on the curve. So watch what I'm going to do now. Let's go ahead and find our regression. So I'm going to say that I'm going to go stat, calc, quadratic regression, and I'm going to come up with my equation. This is going to tell us whether or not this is a quadratic for sure. So let's do this together. Stat, calculate, quadratic regression, second 1, comma, second 2, comma, alpha, trace, y1. Enter. A is not 0, right? So we're good. This is going to be a quadratic equation. So negative 400 x squared plus 1120x. That's it. There, C is 0, and that's fine. Let's go ahead and hit graph now. There we go. It's going through the points, right? But am I seeing the whole parabola? What should I try if you're stuck? You can try one of the zooms. I'm actually curious to see what we do here. Zoom fit. Zoom fit still doesn't do the job for me. So I need to try to change my window. So I'm going to go window, X min, I'm going to go -2. Y min, I'm also going to go, maybe I'll go -5 there because there's a big value on the other side on the max, right? But just change the X min and the Y min to a negative value. That's my first step here. And I'm going to hit graph and see what I'm able to see now. So I start to see a bit more of it, right? I was just zoomed into these 3 points. Now I see more. Chase the curve. Let's change our Y max to, let's say, 1,000. That's better. And now I'm going to change my X max. Let's go 5 there. And so there we go. That is what you want to see for you to be able to answer questions thereafter. Okay. What does it ask me next? What ticket price would result in a maximum profit? Right? Maximum profit. And what is that maximum profit? Where are we, which point are we zooming into? The vertex, right? So we're going to go ahead and find that second trace. This is going to be the maximum. So let's go ahead and find that maximum. Second trace, maximum, left, right? And so there it is, 139,900,784. So that rounds to 140,784. That is the actual coordinate of the vertex. Let's go ahead and write it over here. This is 140,784. Okay, you've got the profit on the y-axis. You've got the price per item or cost. Let's go cost. Same thing, price or cost per ticket over here. So a ticket price, here's where you need to make sure you answer correctly. A ticket price of $1.40 will result in the maximum profit of $784. So you've answered both parts here, like what is the ticket price and what is that maximum profit that we're after. I'm almost done. How many tickets are expected to be sold at this price over here? Remember, our equation relates, let's do this one more time, relates cost and profit. Okay. Now it wants what? How many tickets? Like, it's asking me how many tickets. Yeah. I can't do that just like that with the graph, okay? So I need to use this one. I need to use this fact right here. Profit is cost times tickets. What is the profit that we're talking about here? It is 784. So you substitute that in there. 784 is equal to $1.40. That's how much I'm charging times the number of tickets. So what will I do there? What kind of operation needs to happen there to figure out division? There we go. $1.40, $1.40. So you basically just divide both sides by $1.40. It allows us to cancel out the $1.40 in front of tickets. So number of tickets would be 784 divided by $1.40. And you're going to realize you're going to do that automatically moving forward. You're just going to divide them. That's 560 tickets that we're expecting to sell. If this is a decimal, make sure you round. Okay, we can't have 0.5 of a ticket, right? So you need to round if that is needed. This is the last thing I'm going to do. We're not going to graph this thing, okay? I'm just going to ask you to try this on the other questions there. What ticket price or ticket prices would give or yield a profit of 450? Okay? So it's basically asking you this. What is the ticket price? What is the ticket price when the profit is $450? Okay? What should I be charging? So how do we do this normally if we know the y? We go y2 is equal to 450, and then we go second, trace, intersect. So let's go ahead and do that. y2 is equal to 450, and hit the graph. And what do you notice? It happens in two different instances, right? There's a cost here and there's a cost there. So we got to find both of them. Okay, so on our notes, if you go back to your notes, let's just do a quick curve like this where the 450 goes through here so you know what you've been doing, right? And so we need to figure out this and this, like the two x values there. So let's go ahead and do that. Second trace 5. Enter, enter, enter. This one gives me 0.49, so 49 cents. And this one, let's go over to that one. Gives me a price of 2.31. Okay, so charging either one, either price will give you that $450 profit. Okay, so either 49 cents or $2.31 will yield a profit of $450. Yield, have you heard of that word yield? Yield is gives. Like if your investment yields a lot of profits, it's like it gives you a lot of profits, right? So that's what it. I know that if you do driver Z, yield means, right, like you can like merge into traffic. It's a little different use there. But why is there two possible prices? I will just say this: lower price, more sales. Higher price results in less sales, right? Fewer sales, but both of them arrive to the $450 profit, okay? So you decide what you want to do. You want your theater to be packed, charge less, be packed, or do you want to rather charge a bit more and not have as many people attend? That's a business decision you got to make. And so we're going to stop there. I'm going to ask you to try pages 56 to 57. Let me just double check here to make sure. 56. I'm going to say 56 to 58, but I'm going to give you a bit of a deal here. Pages 56 to 58. No graphing, okay? So you leave the graphing, you leave that for now. You just focus on filling in the tables, determining the equation, and then maybe figuring out what is the max profit, what do I need to charge to get that max profit. So no graphing, nothing past that, okay? Thank you, guys.